All right, welcome back. Part two of fitting a barrel to an Action F-Class style. Previous video, we went over tools you need, details on setup, some discussion on my fears of form reaming versus single point threading, other people's idea of fear on a lathe of single point threading, things of that nature. So like I said, pulled the barrel out. We're going to start with the barrel going into the lathe, do full setup on it, the whole thing. One thing you need to realize is that on these there is a stamped end on these barrels, and the stamped end on these barrels is your identifier of what the barrel is, who made it, what the rifling pitch rate is, and what the material is. Few manufacturers throw serial numbers on them too. Schillen doesn't do that. But this is your breech end. This is the side that you chamber. The other end is that end. And that's your muzzle. That's the orientation that the barrel manufacturer wants you to do it. The reasons behind that, I have no idea, but that's what they want you to do. Copper ring, like we were talking about. 1/4 inch copper. I just bent this up in the vise, hammered it around a old piece of barrel, and close enough. Don't be making any dick jokes. So, barrel's going all the way through the spindle, put it all the way in. We're going to have a stick out of about 2.5 inches. That's 2.5 inches right there. I'll zoom you guys in a second. Welcome back to part two of part two. We're going to get this barrel set up, get it all going. I've got a better view now to where I can get everything in frame and be able to control the camera off my iPad to zoom in and out. We're going semi-professional here. So we'll see. This can't be good though right here. This is ugly. I have all belief that this thing's going to vibrate off and fall on the floor. It is what it is. Okay, so we're in the lathe. We're sticking out about 2.5 inches here. Let's see if I can zoom us in just a touch. There we go. And you guys still can't see it, but that's 2.5 inches. So I'll zoom us back out a little bit here. So I've already got the gauge pin selected for this side of the barrel. That's why my number's written down here. This is a 2377. This is a little on the large side for a Schillen. And I throw this guy all the way in until it just snugs up. Which is the reason why they want you to cut an inch off of both ends of the barrel, is the ends of the barrels are not the highest quality of the finish. They guarantee the internal diameter from end to end on a match grade barrel to be within a 1/2 thou, I believe, or yeah, 1/2 thou from end to end consistency. And I think it's 1/2 thou. Don't quote me on that one, but they guarantee it to be that good. But the first inch and the last inch of the barrel, no guarantees at all. They're like, no, you've got a 32-inch blank. That's a 32-inch blank that's going to be cut down to a 30-inch barrel. So you need to cut it down to make it right. So all I did was I loosened up number 2 and number 4 on the chuck so that we're not having to do a full you know, reset up on this thing, but which I also did on the back side as well. We'll set up an indicator here. We'll set up our indicator on the back side of this as well. That's not terrible. I can see it rolling out relatively significantly, but we're still completely and totally loose on the back side of this thing. So I'm going to slide this up, and I'm going to put the copper bars in this thing. What these do is this protects the barrel from the bolt driving directly on the barrel and tearing up the barrel. So lock that in so that doesn't move around. And we're going to set up, we'll indicate this in back here as well. I need to do this. So there's the rear of the barrel, the rear of the lathe. And as you can see, it's got the bolts here and the copper bars to prevent the bolts from and screwing up the finish of the barrel. So let me put you guys back, and we'll get a indicator set up, and I'll get a try and get a proper view over the top of the indicators. So here we go. What I like to do is I set my indicators up so that I can drive them on and off of the center line, you know, so that I'm not beating my indicator. These things only have about an 8 thousandths total travel, whereas a thousandths indicator is going to have about 30 thousandths, you know, 15 thousandths one way, 15 thousandths the other. These only have 4 thousandths one way, 4 thousandths the other. So they're relatively snug. The rear gauge pin is in, front gauge pin is in. We're roughly snugged up here, and we're going to start looking at, we got something over here bouncing around. What's moving here? There we are. I heard the copper bouncing around over here. Yeah, the rear is out significantly because, you know, obviously this is the initial dialing of it in here. What I like to do is roll this and come down on my indicator until I just tick it. And let's see if we can zoom in on the indicator here. So on the rough, we're just gonna dial this thing in roughly, because it is, you know, out by a lot. So there's my high spot right there. You guys really can't see. There we go. Okay. So now you guys can see the needle flick on the indicator. So that's my high spot. Right there. That's my high spot, which just happens to be in between two chuck jaws. I'm going to dial this up to 0. So this thing can flick all the way up. And then I'm going to start pushing this down. I'm going to push this one down. And then I'm going to tighten this guy back up. And this is probably going to be the dull and boring side of the video. So right now we're at 1, 2, no, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 thousandths out. That's our high side right there. And when you tighten this up, go half, split your difference there. So now you can see we're within about 2 thou, just shy of 2. So, and this is where we start looking at the rear. So on the rear end, it's just the same principle up here. We're using bolts to get it lined up. I'll bring you guys in on this side to see it when we're ready to go on this side. It's the same dull, boring crap up here. I'm looking for the high side, I'm pushing that down, and we'll get it adjusted. When I got to do the final adjustments and for verification, because you guys want to see it, what's the run out on the back end, what's the run out on the front end as I go to chamber this thing. Yeah, we're going to do that in full disclosure, full clarity. So, but I don't have multiple cameras. I got multiple batteries for this thing, and you know, so cut me some slack, guys. Again, I'm doing the same thing on the back end. I'm going to come in, we're zoomed all the way up. I'm rotating it until I just get a tick, a high spot on the indicator reading, which is right about there, which is between the 1 and the 4. And I'm going to start applying pressure. With my screws to knock this down. And that already changed where we're at. Screw number 1 is still way high. Alright, so we're within about 4 thousandths on the backside. And I bet you that changed. Oh, yeah. So look at this. Look at this, guys. Because we moved around the back, now the front is off by about 4. And it was within 2. It was pretty close to 2 when we started. So this is why you got to go back and forth, back and forth. And this is why it's easier to have 2 identical indicators on 2 identical mag bases. Again, this is my way of doing things. This is what I found works best for me. If you've got a different way that can get you to the same level of precision or the level of precision that you need, go for it. Be my guest. Like I said, this is a technique that was taught to me by Butch Lambert. I don't like using, let's take a second. I don't like using grizzly rods. Grizzly rods rely on your tailstock being absolutely perfect and no twist in your lathe bed. Very few lathes set up in home shops are anywhere near 0 twist in the bed and the tailstock dialed in dead nuts perfect, which is why I don't like it. On top of the fact, and I'll grab the reamer, on top of the fact that this is a bushing that slides on and rotates on this reamer. It's the same bushing that goes on the end of the grizzly rods. For doing F-class work, I'm not a fan of using the grizzly rods. I'm not saying that they're a bad idea. I'm not saying that they're a bad product. I'm not saying any of that. What I'm saying is I don't like the concept. People cannot like black coffee, for crying out loud, and or not like coffee at all. It's my choice. It's personal choice. You do what you want to do. So The thing that I get, and maybe it's overboard, is because I was taught this by a well-known bench rest shooter, Mr. Butch Lambert, Jesse Lambert, out of Texas, Poetry, Texas. He doesn't like using the grizzly rods because this bushing has a little bit of slop. It has to slide on the reamer. It has to slide on the grizzly rod to be able to be fitted on there. It cannot be a rigid fit. So there's a little bit of give there. And what he's worried about is, if there's a little bit of give there, what are you actually indicating in? Are you indicating in the run out of the bushing and the slop between the shaft and the bushing, or are you indicating in the true position of the barrel? And the reason for going with these Dektronics pins is you can get, and you can even see there's a little bit of movement there. That's not, yeah, well, and that's because the it's the very end of the pin is snugged up tight. There is a taper here. Said, this is not going to be the setup for doing the chamber work just yet. You're going to see a better representation of this. This is just to get us aligned extremely close so I can part this thing off, and then we're going to double check to make sure that all that pressure that I'm going to put on this part when we part this thing off, if did anything move. And chances are the last 4 barrels that I've done, the setup did move by about a thou and a half, and that's not good for doing chamber work. So we're back again here. So this one's high. I'm going to push down on this till I get to about the 2, and look at that. Now we're within about 1, and the rear end of this thing. So I don't want to push on this anymore right now. I want to get this dialed in a little further. So that's showing me that number 4 is high. And we're about 1 2/10 on the back side. Now how did that change us up here? That only changes by a couple of tenths. So there's the high side right there. I'm going to take a little bit off of there. And you see, we're already starting to see the inconsistency in the reading based on the bearings here. So I'm going to loosen this just a touch because, where's my hammer? Because when I was pushing on this thing, it was getting a little tight, and I'm trying to balance the pressure on the copper across it, and I'm going by feel. There we go. Look at that. Now we're within, what is that? It looks like about 3/10. And there's my ink. Do you see that? She just jumped up to 4. 3, 3.5. You see? 3.5, 4. I'm going to have to block the camera here just a touch. So it's going just on the other side of the line of 3/10. And there, that was 3.5. That's 3.5. That's almost 4. You see? So there's about 1/10 of run out in this machine. Maybe 1/10.5 of run out in it. And, you know, for an old freaking lathe that I paid $2,500 for, it's not bad, you know? So our high spot is, again, between 2 spots. So I'm going to snug that just a touch, and I'm going to snug this just a touch. This one actually feels pretty soft, so I probably pushed it way out of whack. Yeah, see, now I messed it all up again. But this is what you got to do. You got to go back and forth on this stuff. So I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to continue on getting this thing going. You guys don't need to see me do all this BS. And then I'll get it dialed in. And it's going back and forth. I push on the high side here, or I loosen up. I want to make sure that I've got the same amount of tension here as best I can. Doing the same thing on the back side, and then we go from there. Okay, part 3 of 2. Now you can see the slight, that's reading about 1/10 to 2/10, including my run out in my machine. So I've got to kick the and the back side here is within 2/10, and that's good enough for parting off, center drilling, counter boring, and getting set up to do the barrel tenon and things like that. We're going to double check, and then we're going to go from there. Okay, in addition to part 1, I forgot to put this in, but this is a piloted center drill that we use. This pilot is removable and replaceable, and I've got 3 or 4 of these things. I have 3 of them in different sizes. The pilot is there to fit the bore diameter so that your center is cut true to the bore, and then this is a form tool used to cut the counterbore on a Remington Action. This gets that bolt counterbore in the front of the chamber area. So we're going to be using this, and we're going to be using this. I've got to change the bushings on this, but I failed to mention these in part 1. This will be a little, I'll fit this in somewhere in there. You'll see the jump cut.